So you use apps like Signal or WhatsApp on your iPhone. You probably think your messages are totally secure, private, and, when you delete them, they're just gone forever. But what if I told you that for years, that was a really dangerous assumption? Let's get into it.
I mean, think about it. The last really sensitive conversation you deleted. Are you 100% certain it's actually gone? Because for a very long time, the answer was a shocking no. And what's worse, law enforcement knew all about it.
And look, this isn't just some theoretical what if. This was a real flaw that was being actively used, letting authorities waltz right past the encryption you trusted to protect you. It's like the entire illusion of privacy just shattered.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to pull back the curtain on this encryption myth, see exactly how the FBI took advantage of it, and then break down the technical flaw behind it all. After that, we'll cover Apple's kind of controversial fix, and most importantly, give you a solid plan to protect yourself for good.
Okay, first up, the encryption myth. Let's get right to the core of the problem. You install apps like Signal or WhatsApp for one big reason, their promise of end-to-end encryption. But it turns out, on an iPhone, that promise had a massive loophole.
And here's the kicker. We're not talking about some server in the cloud. We're talking about a hidden, completely unencrypted database sitting right there on your own phone. So even after you hit delete, a plain text copy of your private message could be just hanging out for weeks.
And like I said, this isn't just a privacy scare. It has had serious, real-world consequences. So let's jump into a specific case and see exactly how this flaw was used to get around some of the most secure messaging apps on the planet.
So in this case, you had suspects using encrypted apps. Feeling totally confident that their chats were private, they were deleting messages. But here's the thing. The FBI got a hold of their iPhones. They didn't even need to bother trying to break the encryption. They just pulled the so-called deleted messages right off the device from that hidden cache.
And this just perfectly shows you the weakest link in the chain. The encryption between the two phones? It was working just fine. The problem was the phone itself. Once law enforcement has the device in their hands, tools like Celebrate can just scrape up all that leftover data, completely sidestepping the app's security measures. The encryption becomes totally irrelevant.
All right, so how on earth does something like this even happen? How does a deleted, supposedly encrypted message end up in a plain text database? Well, it all comes down to a feature you use probably 100 times a day: notifications.
Every single time you get a message preview that pops up on your lock screen, iOS has to decrypt that message just to show it to you. To do that, it uses something called notification caching, basically creating a temporary local copy. And yeah, that's where it all went wrong. Okay, let's walk through this step by step. A secure message comes in. To show you that little preview on your screen, iOS makes a temporary unencrypted copy. You read it, you delete it inside the app, and the app does its job perfectly. But because of a bug, iOS just forgot to delete its own copy from that hidden notification database.
Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. This was not Signal's fault. It wasn't WhatsApp's fault. This whole process happens at the operating system level, totally outside of the app's control. The apps were basically doing their job, telling iOS, hey, get rid of this. But the OS just wasn't listening.
So after this vulnerability got blown wide open by the media, and Signal's president publicly called Apple out, the pressure was really on. And to their credit, they did act, releasing an emergency patch to fix it. I mean, this timeline really shows the power of investigative reporting and, public pressure. First, the media reports exposed what was happening. Then, Signal's president put Apple on blast. And finally, Apple was pretty much forced to act, and they moved fast to close this huge loophole. Here are the specific updates you need to be looking for. And installing one of these does two really important things. One, it patches the bug so it can't happen anymore. And two, it purges that old database, finally getting rid of any message scraps still left on your device. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? Here's where the story gets pretty frustrating. For a lot of people, getting this critical security patch came with a very unwelcome string attached, especially if you were on an older version of iOS.
So you're faced with this tough choice. On the one hand, you absolutely need this security patch to protect your privacy. But on the other hand, the cost for a lot of people was being pushed toward a major OS update that they were actively trying to avoid because of a bunch of other reported bugs. And here's the really sneaky part. If you are on an older version of iOS and you installed the security patch, Apple would automatically re-enable automatic updates on your phone, basically trying to force you to upgrade to the newer, buggier OS overnight. It's a questionable move, to say the least. Okay. Enough with the problems. Let's get to the solutions. Here is your definitive, two-part plan to take back control, get the patch you need, and permanently lock down your privacy moving forward.
First, let's update safely. Go to your settings, find and install the right security update for your phone. But the second it's done, and I mean immediately, dive right back into the software update settings and turn automatic updates back off. This gets you the security patch you need without the unwanted OS upgrade.
All right, now for the permanent fix, the one that protects you from this whole class of bug, today and in the future. Go into your settings, find the notification settings for each of your secure messaging apps, Signal, WhatsApp, even iMessage, and change Show Previews to Never.
And here's why this is the ultimate solution. If you don't allow previews, then iOS never has a reason to decrypt your messages in the first place. If the operating system never even sees the unencrypted text, it can't cache it, it can't log it, and it can't leak it. You've just cut the problem off at the source.
Which, it brings us to this one last kind of uncomfortable question. Was a flaw that was this convenient for law enforcement, a flaw that logged unencrypted chats for weeks, was that really just an accident? Or was it a feature, a backdoor hiding in plain sight?
We might never know for sure, but what this whole mess proves is that as long as the operating system itself can see your messages, the promise of true end-to-end encryption can always be broken. The most secure app in the world is only ever as safe as the device it's running on.